Absolutely. I need one of those. You know, that's the worst thing. I was just in Mexico, and there are more mosquitoes there than there are here. And they're
Oh
just not
God.
equipped as with air conditioning or screens, or just not as much as we are here. It just isn't a thing. I was in Mexico City and San Miguel de Allende, and you know what it is about what annoys me the most about mosquitoes is they just love flying around your ear.
Yes, they
And
do.
I'm like, why? What is it? Is it just circumstance? It's just the fact that you could, because, you know, it seems like they're always there. They're not, obviously, because they circle the room and they
Right,
just try to find a spot on your body that has the thinnest amount of skin that they can pierce.
right.
And our the skin on our ears and on our neck is relatively it's more permeable, I suppose. I don't know, it's just, why is it it drives me nuts. But
Yes,
anyway,
right,
so I put like a pillow on my head,
right.
and I so that I can fall asleep. But yeah, it was an adventure. Let's just
Oh
say
God. Doesn't sound nice.
that.
Um,
Not all of it was, but man,
right.
Mexico City I fell in love with. I gotta say, what a great town. What a
And
great town. I loved it there. San Miguel de Allende was beautiful. I spent a little too much time there. I shot a music video there and played a show there. And unfortunately, I also was visited by Montezuma, or
oh
Moctezuma,
God,
as he.
Montezuma's
Ah,
revenge.
yes.
Oh
Unfortunately,
Lord.
he took his revenge on me.
Oh
Um,
Lord.
and it was terrible, Howard. It
Ah,
was a fucking nightmare.
oh my
But
Lord.
I survived it, and I'm much better now. So please don't send me a lot of messages. Yes, I'm okay. I'm okay. But it was I am fine. But it was rough. It was rough. But it the energy of Mexico City. I got sick in San Miguel, but in Mexico City was just amazing, and the history of that city, and the history of Tenochtitlan, the city it
Right,
was before the Spanish built Mexico City on
right,
top of this uh, city on a lake, which had been already built on top of a lake by the
right.
Aztecs. I mean, it's just fascinating, and the energy there. It's really stunning. Like I can't wait to go back. I
Wow.
had a great time, even though Montezuma, paid me a visit or two or three.
Amazing.
But
Well,
but anyway,
so should we get back to Michael and
yeah,
the
back
food
to the chair.
banquets?
So how did you feel about the fact that he was? Oh, did he choose to sit in a separate seat, not with his brothers? Because there were
We just
four. There
all
were four then,
automatically,
right? It
we
was
automatically, yeah, there were four
it was
brothers,
four, yeah.
and we automatically fell into these configurations.
Mm,
Obviously the brothers trusted me because they put me at the center.
yeah.
And
And
then
I mean,
when
Michael
Michael
was
was here,
exploding at that time with Thriller
yes,
already. Yeah,
yeah, he had the biggest selling album in history at that point. Probably bigger than Elvis and the Beatles combined.
yeah.
So yes, he was huge. But this is just the body language stuff, the stuff the decisions your body makes without consulting you.
Mm,
Obviously, we all trusted each other.
yeah,
Obviously, we felt like family together,
yeah.
which was very sweet
That's
of
so
them
nice. It's so nice.
to sort of adopt me.
It's very
So
special, man.
Michael is sitting on the banquette to my right, the throne, and I'm sitting at his left hand. And now we've been getting, when I came
Wow.
into the situations, the press was attacking the Jacksons
The
and Rolling
Jackson.
Stone in particular. And Rolling Stone and what Rolling Stone said, everybody else was copying all over the world. And what Rolling Stone said was the Jacksons were having this final tour, and the ticket prices were going to be $30 when ticket prices were normally 11, 12.50. Why? Because the Jacksons saw this as their last chance to make money off their brother Michael. They were being vampires. They were going to take as much money as they could in order to make sure that they could live comfortably for the rest of their lives.
Wow.
That was already there, and it was the perception when I arrived on the scene.
Mm.
So, and then Dave Marsh, who, like Rolling Stone, was a lead sheep. In other words, all the other sheep in the press copied his stories. And Dave Marsh said, look,
cheap.
we know everybody in the business. We, meaning the rock crit elite. And the Jacksons have hired nobody that we know to set up the stage. So the stage is going to collapse. The Jacksons have hired nobody that we know to do the sound system. So the sound system is going to electrocute the performers on stage. The Jacksons have hired nobody that we know to do the lighting. So those lighting trusses, 4 and 5 stories high, are going to collapse on the head of the audience. And nobody that we know has been hired to do security. So there are going to be gangs running up and down the aisles with knives, disemboweling people. And you can't possibly take your kids to this show.
Oh my God.
CBS Morning News actually one morning had Dave Marsh on for 10 minutes, giving his spiel about why everything was going to be a catastrophe. Then they had me on countering everything that he was saying. Well, I was countering.
Is there footage of that somewhere? Can we find that? Because I would love to see. I would kill to see that.
I have no idea. But
if anybody out there has extra time, please find that footage and send it to me.
Well, I don't know, this was crazy. I was very faithfully married, and one of the anchors who had just moved from Phoenix to New York City on the CBS Morning News literally fell in love with me. And I had to make...
Of course I did, darling. Come on.
It was so sweet of her that it's ridiculous. But I was a faithfully married man. That's the way I was going to stay. So at any rate, back to... so all of these stories were being told all around the world. There were, for each clip that came out, there were thousands of almost precise copies of that clip. And it was a nightmare. Here for the finest people I've ever met in my life. And
this was only a U.S. tour, or did it go?
I don't remember. I only... they eventually, well, it's a long story. Eventually, there was a Darth Vader, and I was trying to track him down. I mean, I realized at a certain point that the reason I'd said yes to the Jacksons instantly when I entered their hotel room, the reason I'd been able to see in a second that they were 4 of the finest people I'd ever met, 4 of the most ethical people I'd ever met, and they were up against some kind of demonic problem. And so my job and the real tasks they were setting me without ever saying a word about it and without me being able to articulate it was, my job was to save Michael's fucking soul. And that meant finding the Darth Vader who was planting all of these negative stories and was trying to destroy things. And eventually I did, but that's another story. So
who was it?
So back to, I believe it was Irving Azoff.
Oh, wow.
So I was playing.
Well, it wasn't Jann Wenner.
No, I was in a chess match with Irving Azoff, one of whose brilliances, if you're going to be a villain, it pays to be brilliant.
Is he still with us? No, right?
Yes, he is.
He is?
Yes, he is. And he's still active in the music industry. And one of his brilliances was his ability to remain invisible. And you remember in Sherlock Holmes, Moriarty, who's the arch-villain, his brilliant talent is to stay invisible. So you never know he had anything to do with any of these crimes he was actually pulling off.
Oh, okay. There's so much of that bullshit.
Right. So Michael explained something to me that I had not known. He said, look, in essence, what he said was, look, you saw the quality of awe and wonder and surprise that I get out of things. I owe that quality to my kids. I owe it to them. And I started to put together this tour a year and a half before it was due to go out on the road. And I found the best stage people, the best sound people, the best lighting people, the best magicians. And I made them all sign NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, because I wanted this tour to be a complete surprise to my fans. I didn't want any of the details leaking out and spoiling the surprise. In other words, Michael was saying he owed that intense quality of aesthetic orgasm that he gets, that awe, wonder, and surprise that no one else on earth that I've ever met but Michael gets. He owed that to his kids. And when he was talking about those kids, I had one of the few visual visions in my life. Most of the time, a vision is in my gut somewhere. But this time it was in my visual system. I saw Michael's ribs as golden gates. I saw those gates swing open. And I saw 10,000 kids in his chest.
Did you dream this or?
No, this was happening in real time. It isn't that I couldn't see Michael anymore, that I was having an hallucination that blocked out
You
everything.
had this vision as you were talking to him?
Yes, and he was talking to me. And then
Did you say something? Were you like, by the way, Michael, darling, I just saw
Michael
your insides.
Michael never knew this. I never had a chance to share it with him. Wow. And I wish, now that you mention it, because I hadn't thought of that, I wish that I had the chance to share it with him. But then I explained to Michael just how savagely the press had been tearing this tour apart, just how deep the mistrust of this tour went, just how much the vision of this tour as an utterly amateur affair was planted in the public soul worldwide, and how he could not afford to postpone. I mean, he explained to me why, because he would lose what little credibility was left. He would validate the idea that this was a Mickey Mouse amateur tour. Now, the reason he wanted to cancel, I had been out in LA about a month before, because Jackie Jackson, a lot of athletes come down with bone spurs in their knees. And Jackie went into the hospital to be operated on with arthroscopy, whatever it's called. They put a little tube inside of you and they look around using the tube to look around, and they find the chip and they extract it with a minimum of invasive. They don't cut open your knee or anything like that.
Yeah.
So he'd gone in for that operation, and I had organized a press conference at the hospital with the doctors explaining exactly what was going on. And they expected Jackie to be better in about 6 weeks. Well, a month later, it was very clear that Jackie was not going to be ready in 2 weeks' time for this tour. And Michael said, look, my brother Jackie is the best dancer I have ever seen in my life. Imagine that statement coming from Michael Jackson, who has studied intensely every dancer from Fred Astaire to James Brown. And my brother Jackie is the best choreographer I have ever seen. So if my brother Jackie can't go out and perform with us, we will not be giving my kids what they deserve.
When you say my kids, you mean
Michael's kids.
He didn't have any children then, did he?
No, he referred to
his
fans, to those fans in his chest, as his kids. His fans all over the world as his kids. One day he took those.
I never heard that before, that he referred to his fans as his children, like his
as his
offspring.
Kids, but not as his offspring, as his kids. I mean, one day, one day
there'll be a lot of offspring.
Well, we're 110 miles north of LA on the beach, and we've had a Lotus trucked in, a Lamborghini trucked in, all kinds of cars to die for trucked in for a photo shoot on the beach. And each of the brothers has a dressing trailer, including Michael. Well, Michael's brothers spend all their time in the dressing trailer waiting for everything to be ready to take the shot. That's not what Michael does. There are wood fences going down to the beach on either side of this plot of territory that we're using. And there are a bunch of kids hanging around at one of the wooden fences. And Michael spends his entire time over at that wooden fence with the kids. And one day, Frank DeLeo, who was the Jacksons' manager, Michael's manager at the time, and who was one of the dumbest people I've ever met in my life.
Yeah, it happens. Uh-huh.
But he said, look, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but do you know what Michael does to prepare to go on stage every night? Most artists have to be alone, to steel themselves to go on the stage. Not Michael. Michael has me find 2 kids dying of cancer who want more than anything else in life to meet Michael Jackson. And Michael spends the 45 minutes before he goes on stage with those kids. Mm. And this is Michael Jackson. This is the real person. He was ethically, morally, in terms of the truth at any price, including the price of your life, but most of all important as the second law of science, awe, wonder, surprise. Michael was those things come to life in a way I had never conceived. So when I finished explaining to Michael, we're back in the dressing trailer now, exactly what the consequences would be, that the parents would not let their kids go to these concerts, that his kids would not be able to come see him. It turned out people who called me and said, you got to be out here at 11 o'clock tonight. Michael's canceling his tour and you're the only one he will listen to. It turns out they were right, because Michael saw what I was talking about. He understood what I was talking about. And he decided not to postpone the tour until Jackie could perform. And it was like when Michael is telling you a truth that is powerful to him, he has a prophetic presence. It's beyond what you see in most human beings most of the time, far beyond it. Mm-hmm. And when I have a truth that I know is true, I have a prophetic presence. Mm-hmm. As awkward as that is to say about yourself, but it's true.
No. I mean, I've had those kind of feelings, where you just feel like whatever's. It's kind of like performing, like when I'm singing like certain songs. It just
because
feels
when
like,
you are when
it just
you
feels
are
like the voice just sort of comes through you, and
yes,
there's an out of body experience, and it freaks me out a lot. I get it. Sometimes it scares me because I think this is happening right now, and that sound is me,
right?
And it's weird sometimes. It's very.
But that's
weird.
when you do your best performance.
Usually, yes, yeah, because you're just so you're so a part of it, that everything sort of becomes one, inside of you and in your head and around you, and it's a very powerful experience when it happens.
I call that the gods within.
Yeah.
Speaking through you, and right. they are able. The gods within are like embers in a dead fire that are still smoldering a little bit with redness. And when the oxygen of the audience attention hits those embers flare in flame. And the gods inside of you, and the gods inside of you come alive. Yeah. And they shove the normal you aside, and they take over. And for whatever amount of time it is, you become an empty pipe with the soul of 7,000 people flowing through you to what Peter Townsend called the Godhead, to something up here around your head where it's transformed and it flows back. But you are no longer in control.